Dine Brands believes in virtual brands, the new standard for drive-through, and the dangers of to-go packaging. That's all ahead on this week's Monday Minute. Monday Minute works like this. We're going to ask each other 5 headlines from the last week's big headlines. Are you ready? Let's go. All right, Meredith, the first question is for you this week. Dine Brands CEO John Payton came out with some very positive comments on virtual brands this week. What did he say?
Yeah, I love this. Well, let's take a listen and then we'll talk about it.
Virtual brands are in their infancy, but they were accelerated during COVID. And I love the model. We've got Cosmic Wings in partnership with Cheetos and PepsiCo at Applebee's, and we're launching grilled cheese and super quesadilla at IHOP. And what's so interesting about these brands is, number one, it's low capital, right? It's a lot less expensive to launch a virtual brand via the third-party delivery apps than it is to build a bricks-and-mortar restaurant. You can target a virtual brand to a demographic, to a day part. For example, grilled cheese and super quesadilla are targeting the evening for us, where IHOP has got capacity in its kitchens. And you can tweak and learn along the way, turn them on and turn them off. So you can be very nimble in introducing virtual brands. And it's all new revenue, incremental revenue to our franchisees.
Don't get stuck with internet and TV.
All right. So he said a lot of really interesting things there. I think the first of which is that he absolutely loves virtual brands. So we have a mainstream restaurant brand, public company, saying this is a thing of the future that we're going to embrace and we're going to incorporate into our business. So just thing number one, the future is here. That's pretty awesome. IHOP launching 2 brands with partner Next Bite, which is absolutely fantastic. But then he talks about why he loves them so much. And it was 3 things. Number one, he said low capital, right? You can roll out a virtual brand without building a new restaurant, which is great. And I think tells you that there is some capacity out there in the restaurant industry that can be utilized to create brands that are perhaps targeted a bit differently than the ones that are out there today. The second is that he went on exactly to say that we can target different demographics and different day parts with these brands. And so when you target a different demographic as a restaurant, that really expands your reach. You might be able to create a brand that has nothing to do with the base IHOP brand, that has a totally different user. But he said we can also expand in day parts, and that has the potential to expand both reach and frequency as they go after a different day part that their existing consumer or maybe a new consumer might not have normally thought of that restaurant for. And then finally, he said it allows them to be very nimble. Virtual brands, because they are on the internet, allow all the cool e-commerce stuff around test and learn, put something out there, get some feedback, see how it goes, adjust it, make it better. So I love that the mainstream brand is totally on board with this future idea. And I think says a lot about how far we've come in the last few years where, we used to talk about this, Carl, long before we wrote the book about these brands coming to life in restaurants, the way they've come to life in CPG and apparel. And I remember people looking at us like they thought we were, just absolutely crazy that this would ever happen. And now here it is.
Yeah, it's really exciting just to be able to see the way in which restaurants are starting to utilize this extra capacity. Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. All right. So, Carl, next one's for you. Zomato came under some pressure on social media for making noise on 10-minute delivery. What's that all about?
Yeah, so Zomato, of course, is one of the leading marketplaces over in India. We feature them briefly in our book. And it's interesting that Deepinder Goyal, the CEO, put out a lot of kind of content this week saying, look, we're going to do this 10-minute delivery. It's going to be fantastic. And the backlash that he received as a result of this was just amazing. I mean, so many people going, we don't need 10-minute delivery. Are you kidding? Let's just focus on doing the basics of delivery right. Get it to me on time in 30 minutes. Make sure the food is of the right kind of quality. He put out, let me share this with you, one of the images that I thought was pretty interesting. He said, look, this is how it's going to work. And when you look at 30-minute delivery here, you'll see that they've got a component associated to accepting the order, a prep time of 7 to 12 minutes, pickup time of 0 to 3, and then delivery being 15 to 20. And really, I'll just move it up here so you can see a little bit better without our faces over it. On 10 minutes, it says the prep time needs to be something like 3 minutes. And then a delivery radius has to be something like 1.5 kilometers, so about not too far away from the actual kitchen itself, with a 4 to 5 minute delivery window, and then the partner pickup time, the delivery pickup time being 30 seconds. Now, look, I don't know whether we think 10-minute delivery is going to be the right way forward or not, but what I would say is that by pushing the envelope on this, it is trying to focus, I think, a lot of folks' minds on the ability to be able to produce off-premise food in as tight a time window as possible, and then to actually think about the ways in which that passover to a driver can be as swift as possible as well. We were speaking to the COO of a established kind of brand that's doing a lot of virtual brand activity, that was reflecting on a visit to Cluster Truck recently. And he was amazed when he basically saw 7 different packages swept into their delivery drivers within a 30-second period of time, which of course is going to, speed up the time of which food is going to get out to the customers. And Cluster Truck can do that, of course, because they're vertically integrated. But it shows you, again, that if you refine the operation in such a way, that certainly can help. The last piece on this that I've mentioned is, what would a customer pay to be able to get something within 10 minutes? Is there some kind of component here to be able to say, well, actually, if I really am hungry and I want it in 10 minutes, am I willing to pay for that privilege? And if you can operate and execute to that, then indeed, maybe that it's worth exploring it. But I think as we start to see the proliferation of ghost kitchens, of kitchens being closer to where people are actually consuming their food, maybe we're going to be able to get to a place where at least 10, 20-minute delivery is something that's more viable. And Zomato, of course, partnering up potentially as a merger on hand with a quick commerce company that is similar to GoPuff, they potentially are looking at that as an opportunity to combine both food and grocery delivery at the same time. So interesting times happening over in India, and we'll see whether Zomato can indeed execute 10-minute delivery. Okay, our third question this week, Meredith, is around a concerning report, actually. Dangerous levels of PFAS, which you have to tell me what is, were found in restaurant-to-go packaging from the likes of Arby's and Burger King. Any lessons learned on this beyond just stop doing it?
Yeah. So yes, first question, what is a PFAS? And that would be a per or polyfluoroalkyl substance. It's basically a chemical that many restaurants use to coat paper packaging to make it grease resistant. Not just the ones you mentioned. I mean, it's throughout everywhere, restaurant and grocery. You see it a lot. Some states like California are starting to outlaw it. And as California goes, so goes the nation. But I think that we'll see a lot more of this being pulled out. Now, just generally here, and I would broaden this out to say restaurant to go packaging has a long way to go to be more environmentally friendly. We've talked previously about ways to return the packaging and reuse it. I know, at least at our house, every night after dinner, it's a giant sorting exercise to try to figure out what goes in the recycle bin, what goes in the garbage, and what goes in the organics bin. But I think as restaurants start to make that easier and more clear, honestly, it'll be a more pleasant experience. And that's what this is all about. The ease of experience is not just about placing your order or receiving your order. It's also about when you're done, what happens to all that stuff. And a frankly, big motivation, at least at my house, for using delivery is to not have to do the dishes. There's an entire brand in Canada called Skip the Dishes for exactly that reason, right? So I think figuring this out will be good for not just the environment, but for the consumer and the restaurant industry as well. All right, Carl. So Sweetgreen and Applebee's both said they're following Chipotle's lead on the drive-through. What are they up to and why are they doing it?
Yeah, this really should be a question for you, Meredith, because you love talking about the Chipotlane, of course.
It is my favorite thing.
And one of the things that I think is really interesting about the Chipotlane experience is it's removing steps of the ordering experience. People can order on their phones and they just drive up straight to a Chipotle window, get the food, and off they go. And I think it's, again, another example of seamless e-commerce, seamless transactions, and being able to reduce the steps that a consumer needs to take between ordering food and receiving it. And I think what's happening right now with Sweetgreen and Applebee's is they're basically following this lead. Now, take a look at this. This is a sketch of one of the Sweetgreen locations that they're aspiring to build. I don't think it's been built yet. But what we're going to see is something similar to what we see in the Chipotles of this world, where customers can just drive through and pick up, much like they perhaps could do with a curbside, but now it's just easier because it's
So
more
easy.
seamless of transaction, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's fantastic. And Applebee's are going to do exactly the same. And if you were building a drive-through business right now, why wouldn't you do it this way? The only thing I would say is, what about those companies that currently have a drive-through business? Folks like McDonald's. I've done an off-premise review. I've got to get it out there at some point of my McDonald's app experience of going through their drive-through. And, the challenge is that when it's working alongside the current drive-through model and you're trying to create something similar to the Chipotlane experience and the two come together, it's a little clunky. You don't really know what you're supposed to do. And I think it's the ease of this. It's the simplicity of the Chipotle and what Sweetgreen and Applebee's are going to try and do that's going to make it so much easier. And ultimately, if a customer can be able to use their phone to order, then perhaps that is going to be easier than having to talk to someone through a drive-through interface.
Yeah.
The only challenge, I would say, is how many people really want to be using their phones while they're in their car, at what point driving, and all of that side of it. I know when you and I went through our example, we ordered before we left the house. So I think that certainly will help. But there is this component of using your cell phone during the kind of drive up to a restaurant, which might become a bit of a concern. But beyond that, I think it's fantastic.
We're at about 60% of our sales in the U.S. are digital now,
and I would say, honestly, anyone who doesn't have a drive-through, who isn't saddled with the existing order point, they would be foolish not to do it this way, right? This is absolutely the future in terms of getting labor out of the restaurant, increasing accuracy. We find that consumers, when they place an order digitally, take a little bit more responsibility for their order because they can go back and see, oh, that is exactly what I said. So yeah, I don't know why you would do it any other way. I'm super excited to see both Applebee's and Sweetgreen bring this to life. Okay, Carl, last question is for me, huh? Oh, God.
Yeah, what are you going to ask me? Your own question? You can ask yourself a question if you'd like. No, the last question this week is for you, Meredith, and it's about BurgerFi. They've announced a partnership with GoPuff. So what's this about?
Yeah, so BurgerFi is testing delivering hamburgers via GoPuff, and I think there's a couple of interesting things here. Number one, BurgerFi is just a super creative company. They are trying all of the new things, which I think is great way to test and learn and see what works and what's going to drive sales for them. And I am super curious to see which of the things they stick on, carry forward, because I think that will tell us, as they've gone through all of these experiments, which things are most successful. So I would definitely pay attention to what BurgerFi doubles down on, because they're doing the experimentation for us. The second thing that's interesting about this is that GoPuff is delivering food, right? So they had announced that they were going to do some ghost kitchens and pizza, but now they're delivering food from another restaurant. And it seems like, as much as DoorDash is sneaking into GoPuff's space, perhaps GoPuff is sneaking into DoorDash's space. So more to watch there to see if they expand well beyond just BurgerFi and just their test market. But I think that could bring some more competition to the space.
Yes, it's going to be interesting to see out of the escalation of quick commerce with GoPuff and what's happening with DoorDash and Uber Eats, who ultimately wins this particular thing. Do we see those two kind of channels existing separately or coming together at some point, like I was explaining earlier with Zomato? Okay, well, look, that's it for this week's Monday Minute. Hopefully you've enjoyed this week's edition. As ever, please leave your comments below as to what you've liked, what you've disliked, any questions that you've got, or perhaps some suggestions as to what we cover in a future edition. But until next time, we thank you for watching, and we look forward to speaking to you again next time. Bye-bye. The Monday Minute is available for you to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Watch us on YouTube and follow us on all our social media Learn.Delivery channels. Thanks for listening.